Hey, so last time we ran through Create React App, which was a very quick and easy way to create a React web application with almost no pre-made manual configuration to be had. All of it is handled for you, and you can just jump right into the code and start plucking away at it, doing exactly what you want with it. Today, I'm going to start from that same spot with Create React App, but I'm going to add a Node Express web server behind it. That way, we have not only the front end with React, but we also have a back end with a very basic Express web server, so you can start fielding some calls with it. All right, let's get to it. So for starters, I did not come up with this on my own. Actually, this goes to Esau Silva. I apologize if I just butchered that name. But anyway, so this article that Esau put on Medium, let's see, this was actually almost exactly a year ago. It's pretty basic instructions, and this is what I'm going to be following. I'll put the link to this in the description of the video. That's going to be down below. So if you want to follow along, you know exactly where it came from. And I'm just bringing this to you, and I'm just running through it so that we have a quicker way to do this. So I'm already in my Git directory. I don't know if I can, yep, there we go, I can highlight it. So make sure that you start off in a directory wherever you want to get started on this at. And I'm going to do npx create react app. And then we're going to just throw it a name, something basic, CRA, and you know what, let's get a little fancy, plus express. There we go. All right, we're going to wait on that to finish out. Let's cd into it, CRA plus express. Cool, and it's all there. All right, so the very first thing that we want to do is we actually want to take everything that Create React App just made and did out for us and shove it into a client directory inside of the CRA plus express directory. So inside of this directory, we want to create another client directory. So I'm going to pop open File Explorer, bring that over, and we are right here. And I'm just going to really quickly create another client directory. Of course, I could do this in the terminal, but it's a lot easier just to do it all in here. And then, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the Git, just because I'm not ready to handle that inside of this package, or I'm sorry, inside of this application. So I'm going to take the yarn.log file, all of it, even the node modules. That's important, even the node modules. And I'm going to shove all of that inside of client. And okay, so it moved over. Good. All right. And then just because I'm crazy, I want to cd into the client directory. And see, everything is in there. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is start setting up Express. Okay, so at this point, we're going to pop open Sublime Text or any editor, whatever you like, be it VS Code or Notepad++, whatever you like. But for me, it's Sublime Text. Okay, I'm going to pop open my client folders just so that I can see it there. And however, in the main directory, I am going to create a new file. This is going to be a new package.json. And inside this package.json, we're going to create a new object. And we're going to give it a name. Just going to fill out some quick things here. Okay, cool. So we have our package.json all typed out. And this is just something that I do, even though in the article they give you the full package.json, and I was really just referencing this and typing it out by hand. Just as a check for myself, I like to type things out by hand. That way, if I copy and paste it, I feel like there's something I could have glanced over or just kind of gleaned over that I wouldn't have known, without typing out myself. So that's just something I do just to be a little bit more thorough. You don't have to do that. All right, so there's a couple of things here that we're using that a couple of packages we're using that we're going to need to install. One of them being concurrently, and so that is specifically because we need to run the React application and also the Node Express application. So essentially, we're running two applications at the same time, the dev server and the actual web server. And concurrently is what we're doing in order to, or what we're using, excuse me, in order to do that. So let's see, we want to make sure, jump back over to terminal and make sure that we have nodemon installed globally. So npm, I believe I already have it, but let's run through it just to make sure. Npm install nodemon global. Okay, now I'm going to move on to creating the actual server.js file that is going to be the that's going to be what's responsible for standing up the Express web server. So let's see, in the root of our project, I'm going to do new file, server.js, and let's see, you know what, this time I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste everything. So really quickly, just to save some time, copy, there we go. So here we're pulling in Express, and we're pulling in body parser, and then we're initializing Express, and we're setting it to app, and we're setting up our port, and then from here, setting, initializing body parser to use JSON, making sure that Express is initialized with body parser, same thing with URL encoded, and then here we have some of our very first routes. So /API/hello, I'll answer to that, and I'll also answer to /API/world. So in general, what this means is that if you navigate, so say the server is running at localhost port 5000, and so you type into your browser localhost 5000 /API/hello, you should get hello from Express. All right, so let's go ahead and try to run it and see if that's what we get. We want to double check that we are looking at our server, that we're not in the client directory, because if I ran, node server.js, but I was in the client directory, so it would look like this, there would be no server.js for it to target because in the client, and there's nothing in there. I know this may seem elementary, but you're jumping between two applications that are very close to each other. I've made the mistake multiple times. That's why I'm making sure you know about it as well. All right, so let's go back to our server directory, double check that that's where we are. Server.js is there, we see it here, and we'll go ahead, node server.js. Okay, cool. So node.server.js ran, and now it is, so our web server is listening on port 5000. All right, so let's see. Let's go ahead and, grab it, pull it over. Okay, and we'll navigate to localhost port 5000. Okay, so we have a cannot get. Make sure that you see this too. We have a cannot get because we haven't put a route in there. So there's nothing, even though web servers is standing behind it, that's why we don't get any other kind of error code or just a null response. We get something, we get a cannot get from the web server because it's listening here. However, we have to put reference that we have to actually tell it one of our routes in order to get something. So I'm going to come in here, copy the /API/hello route, and throw that at the end of our URL. And there we go. Hello from Express. Okay, cool. So we have half of it done, or I guess you could say about 75% of it done, because we have the create React apps. We have a React web application running from a dev server. We've already seen that by running the npx create React app command. And so now this right here running at localhost port 5000 /API/hello shows us that we have some sort of web server also running. So now we need to get these two working in conjunction, working together. So now we want to switch back over to where our React web application, our client application lives. So in the client directory. And I want to, now this is a key point, I want to go to the client directory, open the package.json for the client specifically, and I want to add a proxy. So I want to add a configuration for the client-side web application to proxy requests over to the web server, or for there to be a proxy between the two. I'm not sure if I said that quite right. We can throw this proxy just up here, basically at the root of our package.json. Make sure you put a comma at the end of the line. I want to make sure that I point out it goes over this in the article as well. And like I said, I'll have the link to the article. In the description of the video down below. But about midway through it, we have this right here. The key to using an Express backend server with a project created with Create React App is to use a proxy. This tells the Webpack development server to proxy our API request to our API server, given that our Express server is running on localhost 5000. All right, I'm just trying to be very explicit about that because this is kind of a roundabout thing that we're doing, and it's if this isn't very clear, then you really can trip up over what's happening here. And when things go wrong, if you don't understand how they work correctly, it's really hard to figure out what's going on when they work incorrectly or when they're not working incorrectly. All right, so the next step, now that we have the proxy set up, now that we have the web server, now that we have the the client-side app or the dev server, is to modify our client-side application so that it can call or they can proxy the requests out to the web server. We're going to get into our client-side code, go to the source folder, open our React component, the app component. Going to set the syntax to JSX so we have proper syntax highlighting. And okay, so we're going to add a call. I'm going to deviate away from the article a little bit. The article goes over a post request, and I'm just going to do a simple get. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go above our render command, or our render method, I guess you could say, and I'm going to create a new function, and I'm just going to call it get response, something basic. It's going to be async. You're going to use our arrow syntax. And let's see, I want to set up constant for response. We're going to await a fetch. And this is the key part. So we're awaiting the fetch, and the fetch is going out to one of the API calls on our server. So remember, our server over here, we have the API hello. So that's where I want to pull from. I want to grab the full string. This is a string. And pop it in there. And that's it for the fetch. Okay, and so we want to basically take the JSON from the response, and that's going to be our body. So we're going to await again the response.json. And just a simple check, I'm going to copy some of my other code over here from the side. We're just making sure that the response actually, exists and that it came back and was successful. And then, if so, we're going to return the body. We're calling out to the web server. We're doing some checks, doing some transformations, and then we're returning the data that we get. That's great. But right now, it's just inside this one method. We can't really show it inside of what we're rendering right here in React. So we're going to call out to a lifecycle hook called component did mount. And I'm going to say this dot get response, and then so after this dot get response is called, because it returns a promise, then response, or res for short, arrow function again, and a constant, and I'm just going to say some data equals res. Okay, and really you don't have to do this. I'm just kind of being a little extra verbose here. And then after that, I'm going to say this dot set state. I'm going to call it rendered response. And then I'm going to set rendered response to some data. All right. Now, the next step is that I'm setting the state, but I haven't actually set up a state yet. There's nothing, this variable right here actually doesn't exist yet. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a state. inside of our component. So that's what the state is, and I'm going to take simply the variable that we're referencing, throw it in the state, give it an empty string, and then the next step is that I'm going to come down here and I'm going to deconstruct the state. So I want to pull a rendered response out of this .state, and I want to take the normal boilerplate that comes with create react app out of the component, and I want to say h2. I'm gonna call it call out to API, and I'm gonna throw it in a paragraph tag, and I'm going to say rendered response, and then close the paragraph tag. Whoop. Okay. All right. Now, if all went well and I didn't mess anything up, this should work completely fine. So we should be able to, at this point, we should be able to start our web server, start our dev server, and be able to see that. However, if we just want to check the client side before checking the web side, what we should be able to come into is, if you see the package.json, we still have a start script for React scripts.start. So what I should be able to do is jump back over here to the terminal, make sure that I'm in the client folder, and then I can do npm start, and it's running the React scripts, starting development server, pull it over, and state is not defined. Of course it's not. Okay, cool. So I messed up state. All right, so the constructor actually wasn't there, and I put state in the wrong place. Stuff like that happens all the time. You live and you learn. Okay, cool. So we have call it to API. However, we have nothing else because we're not running our web server, and we're not. There's nothing returned. However, our component still renders, and we can see that nothing's returned, and the web server isn't running because if we jump back over to the terminal, we see that we have a proxy error. There's no request coming back because the web server is not running. All right, so let's go ahead and kill that. Yes. And jump back over to the code. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and run both. Moment of truth. Now I'm going to run yarn dev. Also, make sure that this is back in the root directory. We're going to run yarn dev, and this is going to use concurrently to run both the web server, the Node Express web server, and the create React app client-side application concurrently at the same time. Go figure, a lot of imagination for naming that one. All right, cool. So web server is started on port 5000, and then we're starting the development server. And let's pull over the window, and what do we get? Oh, okay, all right. So objects are not valid as React child. I can't tell you how many times I ran into this. Okay, so this is good news. What has actually happened, the development server started up, the web server started up, the React application, or the client-side app, called out to the web server, got the request, called out to API hello, so we can see that it's running. So localhost 5000/API/hello. Okay, cool, so that's running. So we're actually getting data back, or we know that we got data back. But then in React, this means that our data came back in a way that wasn't necessarily agreeable with React. I'm including this here because I've ran into this a whole bunch of times, and I want to show you how to get over this. So this is something else that's not really covered in the article that I'm referring to for these notes, but it's still very notable because this is a common hurdle that beginners with React have to get over, because you wouldn't expect it to be there. Let's see, I have opened DevTools for Firefox. I want to get down to what is actually behind rendered response. Is it an array? Is it an object? What is it? Now, of course, you can kind of glean from what happened that this is just a simple object and I'm not dotting into it. However, when you've got a larger application floating around, that might not be so clear because everything else, you're kind of just in the thick of it. All right, so refresh the page after I set a breakpoint. And this is really cool too. You can set a breakpoint basically in your markup, even though it's JSX, so technically this is JavaScript, it looks like our markup. Okay, so we've hit the breakpoint. Rendered response doesn't have a value yet, so I'm going to hit F8 to continue through it. Okay, so now rendered response has a value, and so I'm just going to double check. So I'm going to come down here to our console. I'm going to look into rendered response. Oh, okay, there it is. It actually is an object, and it looks like if I dot into it, so I dot into the express property on it, and then I get the string, which is really what I was expecting, what I was trying to just show on the screen. So I can just go ahead and let this continue. Go back over to the code, throw dot express, save, and we should have our response come right back from the server. And oh, I forgot to get rid of that breakpoint. I can close out of those. Cool. All right, so we have our header, which showed up. We set up on our markup, and then we have our response from the server. Hello from Express. So you can see that the same thing here. Okay. So call out to API. That's our header, and then rendered response from Express and a paragraph tag, and that's right there. So thanks for tagging along. That's it. That is a Create React App application running client side with a Node Express server running server side, and then a proxy between the two to actually bring all the data and the requests into each other. So that's how you set those two up. Thank you for following along. If you made it this far, if you have any questions, please make sure to leave them in the comments down below. If you let me know if you like this sort of thing, if you want to see more of something else. I should have another video going up next week. That one probably is going over something that I've recently been spending some time in with which is CSS modules. This is how to create how to write CSS so that it's locally scoped by default. And the coolest thing is that this is supported in Create React App by default. So there's very minimal configuration, if you could even call it that you have to set up yourself, and you can just get right straight to writing locally scoped CSS. Basically, the idea there is so that you can pull in a component and it's already styled, it already has its markup, it already has its functionality, and it's just right there in a nice, concise little package. I'll be putting that video together next week, and it'll go right along with these two videos. So like I said, last week was getting started with Create React App. This week has been putting a server onto it, and next week I'll be diving into more of that. So if you like that sort of thing, let me know. Always, please remember, like, comment, subscribe. I'll put links to everything that I've been using, articles, notes, and even some of the other stuff. I'll put links to all that in the video description. If there's anything else, let me know. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.